Welcome back to the channel of Truth, Trust and Transparency. Today is a very interesting day. For the first time on Deal Reviews, I am looking out and reviewing a deal located in Tasmania, Australia, which is super exciting. I've seen this one pop up quite a few times online and people mentioning it and talking about it. However, nobody for whatever reason has sent in a deal. So I've just been waiting here for someone to send one in. We got sent one last night. So I thought I'd put together a bit of a deal review. Let's see what Tasmania has to offer, shall we? Alrighty, so this one is in East Devonport. And if you don't know Devonport, it is separated north to south. On the eastern side is East Devonport, where this deal is located. And then on the western side is the main Devonport town. I think what's interesting to know, and as we'll have a look at both the data points, and if I can instill any wisdom upon you guys, a common mistake that I see people make is, you will get really good at knowing the market in East Devonport, right? Or whatever subject it is, or whatever suburb it is. You get really good at knowing that, right? You will get really granular knowing that. And then a real estate agent will have something, but will be in a market that is, for example, Devonport or something similar. A market, a suburb neighbouring East Devonport. And the mistake that people make is to assume, one, that the data is the same, one that is priced and valued the same. You need to remember, if you are locking in and becoming an area expert at one particular suburb, that should be it. Or it could be one or two, but if you're in East Devonport and you get offered Devonport or you're in Devonport and you get offered East Devonport, remember, two totally different markets. Same with, for example, plenty of other suburb. Same with other examples where, you might be in a town like Ballarat and then there might be, say, Alfredton, or there might be, say, Lucas or something like that. You just need to make sure that, one, that the real estate sends through and it is that address. I've seen some real estates being a little bit sneaky, but two is you stick to that suburb. Just because it's a neighbouring suburb doesn't mean you have to go for it. A bit of an example here. So first off, typical price difference between these two is, call it $80,000. East Devonport has grown a third slower over 1 year. A lot slower over 3 years. Devonport's grown at 12%, East Devonport at 2%, and then over 10 years they are roughly the same. So it's just something to watch and make sure of. Let's dig into East Devonport for starters to see what we think about that. Here it is here. Now, one of the issues you have is, again, we want to see that lower risk score. The closer that is to 100, the better. So the fact that it's lower tells me that there may be some potential risks in this market. 477, so there is quite a few other markets at this rate. Dwellings, 2.5, population, 4,300. Now, that is quite low. However, I know where it is located and that there is other sort of towns, people, infrastructure, suburbs located to it. Decent infrastructure spend, which is great. Alrighty, growth rate cycle. So, what is really interesting about East Devonport is that it has seen a kick since COVID-19. We can see that here. It's obviously dropped off and going through some sort of recovery. But again, one thing I say to people all the time is, let's take that COVID out of the story and look previous to that about what it was doing. And it sort of looks just like a regional town. And what I would ask you is, are there better regional towns for, say, 470, 480? I think the answer is yes. Now, one URSAD. Let's open these up. One URSAD and 42% owner to ratio. 42% rented to owner ratio. So, again, we know that there's going to be more renters when the URSAD is low. We know that. One thing that worries me here is that affordability is at 36 years to own for one URSAD, and it already indicates there are a lot of renters already. So for me, that's a little bit of an alarm bell. So let's dig into it. Stock on market is decreasing. So we don't have many listings. Now, you could say, yeah, it's decreasing short-term, long-term. Look at the listing numbers, 4, 5, 6. So there's not really a lot of stock, right? Inventory, approvals, there's probably one approval that I want to go back and have a look at in context. Vacancy rate is low and days on market is pretty average, 40 to 50 days on average. Now, you might say, yeah, look, low inventory and stuff. It's just because there's not a lot of stock and a lot of properties in this area. My issue here with this data is just going to be around the affordability. I know for a fact that there are plenty of other markets offering at that price where they are a stack more affordable. So 35, 36 years to own is just getting up to that stage where, okay, people can't afford that. People can't afford to buy there. Days on market are not really plummeting. The stock is bouncing around 4 or 5 bits of stock each month. But, where is the demand for people? Where is the competition for people wanting to buy here? 42% as well is quite a high renter to owner ratio, even at a 1 URSAD. I have recorded a couple of other suburbs in and around this price range because this is where a lot of investors are looking, where this is 25, 26% at 1 URSAD. Long term, like take COVID out of the picture, it's pretty low growth, and that would be indicative. So if we look at this, since sort of, I suppose, 2022 to 23, we've been unaffordable. So if I go up here, 22 to 23, we've been unaffordable. Well, that's not good for growth. That's not a good indicator there, right? Whereas here is 2020 to 2022, we were really affordable. 2020 to 2022, look what happened to growth. See? So to me, not a great suburb for numbers wise, but let's look at, because we're all the way down here, let's see if there's any difference in Devonport, which is just west. More population, more dwellings, we know that. Is it a similar story, the growth of Devonport? Kind of. Okay. Little bit less renter to owner ratio. It's still on that 35 unaffordability. Vacancy rates slowly been increasing. Days on markets, that long-term average looks around 40. Stock on market, days on market. Look, the data's probably slightly better in Devonport, but what are we getting ourselves into and why are we buying in this particular market? My question would be for you, because it doesn't look as if East Devonport or Devonport have a solid track record. It doesn't look like there's any pressures on the demand side of things. So my question to you would be, why do we need to go down to Tasmania to spend the money on something like this when I know there's plenty of regionals. There's plenty of regionals in a few states at this price range that offer an opportunity. Now, asset itself, David Streets, as I said, this is Devonport here, and we're on East Devonport, connected by obviously the overpass and the bridge here, but there's a lot less going on, and we're right on the top tip of Tasmania. But this is where we are, where it's not a cul-de-sac street. We're up the end of it, but there doesn't seem to be too much going on. We know there is some shipping infrastructure built up there. That's cool. But not too much else. I wonder if I need to go over Team Global Express. I wonder if I need to go over here to do my shopping or not. It's interesting. Doesn't look to be too much out this side, but that's the block. Established David Street. Good name for a street. Not on a main road. Let's have a look at the asset itself from Street View. What's really cool is you're pretty much king of the hill. Good view. You do have a bit of a risk in terms of the slope, though, which is something that concerns me. Great garden. Amazing. Love that. Let's see if there's any issues around dates in the house. No. It appears that it's been the same owners from 2023. If I go 2010 it didn't exist. There you go. So relatively new build. We can see that by the looks of things. Owners have been there for a while. This is the lot in terms of lot size, 585, pretty decent. Let's see the planning layers. So again, we're just wanting to see, this is general residential zoning. Cool. Any overlays? Couple of overlays to be cautious about. There we go. First is landslip hazard. We know that because of the slope of the land, which is obvious, and safeguarding of airports code. Won't be too much to look into. Bushfire. Another thing that this comes up with, and we can see here as a hazard, is landslide. Now, we need to obtain, and my recommendation would be obtaining some quotes to see if that affects us from an insurance point of view, if we still want to go ahead with this. Obviously, no flood or anything like that. We know the topography is quite steep, and the lot appears to be burdened by this easement for your neighbouring lot. However, I always don't see that as an issue unless you're planning a granny flat, which you're probably not here. Just because of the slope and the access is just pretty tricky. Asset itself, so offers over 629, so actually pretty highly expensively priced. 4-bed, 1 bath, 1 car. Let's have a look. Yep, we know it's got a good view. If you are going ahead with this, one thing that you need to be cautious and get the building and pest inspector to have a look at is going to be just how well made and what sort of condition the retaining wall is, because that's holding back, and that's relatively new. And then for them to get under the house and just check the foundations of underneath the house and what sort of condition that is too. It appears to be great. Like, love the view. New polished floorboards. Nothing too bad I can see there. Great outlook. I mean, shocking sort of layout with the TV and that, but it is what it is. Cool. Great natural light. Relatively new, sort of early 2000s, 2010s build. Stone bench tops. Not much to report. This looks like the study. Yep, study through to the lounge. Another indication as well, we'd start to see some cracks if the foundations weren't great. So you can make an assumption here, but always get the building pest guy to get under there and have a look. Cool. All this hardwood furniture reminds me of my parents' place. Bathroom, again, because this is on concrete or some sort of foundation, we can go under and have a look to see if that's been leaking or not. And the aspect of the backyard. This is the house backyard. Okay, bit of work there. That is the house. Okay, school's on the opposite street. Cool. Okay, so it said it was a 4-bedroom. 1, 2. It's actually a 3-bedroom being advertised as a 4-bedroom. So you need to watch that because, firstly, I don't know if they're trying to classify this study or they're saying that this is, but it is presents as a 3-bedroom, marketed as a 4-bedroom. Is there room to convert? 1, 2, 3. Potentially some sort of this. We've got enough for dining and living. So yeah, that lounge room could be converted, but it hasn't and is labelled as a lounge room. Is there any opportunities or any demand for 4 bedrooms? If we go to here, look, there's not a lot of demand for 4 bedrooms. So I probably wouldn't look to do that. And if I'm looking at other properties that are on the market, 489, 640, 365. Interesting. That's on the next street. Jesus. That's the one we know here. A lot of 4 bedrooms over this side. Offers over. Let's have a look at what's sold. Filters. Oh, sorry, this is for rent. So rental market's pretty tight over this side. 500 for 3-bedders, 470, 480, 500, 550 for 433. That's unrealistic because you've got a 311. So looks like maybe you'll be able to pick up $500 or close to in rent. And sold houses in the last 12 months. So across the road, 422,870. Huge sale. Congrats to the agents. Let's see here. 670, 685, 550, 500, 620, 450. So look, it just depends. This is tricky because, you know, you look at this for 620. Bigger block, better frontage, no slope, older style home. Might need some work, but let's have a look at the floor plan, shall we? Give me the floor plan. So, let's have a look. Garage, workshop, lounge, dining. So that's all good. We've got a hall. Yeah, let me see upstairs. Is 1, 2. So that's a 4-bedroom, right? That sold recently, you know, 620 earlier this year. Let's have a look at a few others. 670 and 685. 4-bed, 3-bath. Like, it's not comparable. They're not comparable because this agent's playing, I think, silly games. 500 for a 5-bedroom. That's interesting. Look, do I think it's worth the money? Hard to tell. I think it's Master's one thing. Mast is a sale for a 4-bedroom. It's clearly a 3-bedroom. This is what the agents do to try to get that 4-bedroom price for it. To be honest, I wouldn't be buying a 4-bedroom here because the demand's not there. Do I think this is a good purchase or would I purchase it? No. I think there are better options that for this price point in other states that you should be looking at. I don't see too many drivers or just at a quick look demand for something like this. I think the asset itself is okay. A little bit too much of a slopey block. You've got landslide issues, but inside it presents well. So I would have to pass on this one, definitely. So that's my thoughts on it. Not heaps keen on the suburb data, and would love to hear your guys' thoughts on our first debut for Tasmania. Let me know in the comments.